With their unmistakable taste and flavor, raspberries are a delicious summer treat like no other. Highly prolific and vigorous almost to the point of failure, raspberry plants are a crop that needs our help. Although it doesn't look like too much right now, the raspberry bounty that we get next summer is entirely dependent on what we do this winter. Timing is key, as it always is, but raspberries are pretty forgiving. Totally left alone and unpruned, however, this is one crop that'll truly suffer. Left unchecked, tangled, overgrown, and poor yields are going to be the results, leaving us as unhappy raspberry growers. Fortunately, it's an easy fix, so let's dive into the world of their maintenance and learn all there is to know about pruning raspberries. All raspberries, by nature, are perennial plants, but their shoots, in terms of their reproductive cycle, are mostly biennial. How and when to prune your raspberry patch is entirely dependent on the variety that you're growing. In regards to the typical red raspberries that most people grow, there's literally hundreds to choose from, but they all fall into two main types: June or summer bearing, and fall or everbearing. Let's go over the everbearing type first, as surprisingly, it's the most straightforward to prune. Everbearing raspberries produce fruit on the current year's canes. That is, all the shoots that come up that year have the ability to flower and produce fruit. This means that if you're one cropping your everbearing raspberry patch, once you get that harvest, all visible shoots become expendable. But you don't want to cut them down right away at the end of summer. As we alluded to earlier, all raspberry pruning is done in the winter. For new growers, you can delay that pruning up until the spring, especially if you're unsure of which canes to cut. But pruning in the summer, even after you know those shoots have given you their last berries, is not done. And this is mainly for two reasons. One, after the plant has given its last fruit, even if it's dead and dying, it's going to release nutrients and energy back into the main plant. As these shoots go dormant, or even if they're on their last legs, they drain valuable carbohydrates and sugars back down into the main crown of the raspberry plant. This is not only going to help the main plant be more resilient to a harsh winter, it's also going to make it come back with more gusto in the spring. Years back, I just didn't believe this to be the case, and I'd always cut my raspberries down after fruiting at the end of summer. But after new research came out at a few American universities that showed leaving the shoots on to have quite an effect on the following year's crop, well, I bought in. Whether it's the placebo effect or not, I don't know. But every year, I've seen better and better yields. So I never prune right after fruiting, even if I know which ones to take. The second reason for not cutting down your prima canes immediately after fruiting is that those canes can fruit again. In fact, raspberry canes fruiting in their first year is not actually the norm. Yes, your everbearing types of raspberries are going to give you fruit on those first year prima canes, but for the most part, all shoots on a raspberry plant are actually biennial. So, while you can treat your everbearing raspberries as an annual crop, one that you cut down every year only to start all over again the following, the bulk of all raspberry production on summer bearing and even some everbearing types comes from the second year shoots, known as floricanes. And this is where people get confused and miss out on a ton of raspberry production. What this means is a first year shoot is going to come up, known as a prima cane. It'll grow normally all summer long, go dormant in the winter, sprout and arise again the following spring, becoming a flowering and fruiting powerhouse known as a floricane. Primacanes and floricanes are the same shoot, separated only by age. It's the vernalization and flower bud formation over that first winter that gives floricanes their potent production. Okay, so whether you're growing an everbearing type that's maybe already fruited this past summer, or you planted the June-bearing types that you're waiting on for a harvest, leave those primicanes alone till they come back the next year. Well, they don't really come back. Yes, they lose all their leaves, and for sure they go completely dormant, but they stay upright, patiently waiting for the next spring. So, in any given time of year, your raspberry plants are going to have two types of shoots showing: primicanes, or the current year's new shoots, and floricanes, or the second year flowering shoots. Now, in my opinion, you never want to cut down a primicane, because one, it's never had a chance to flower and fruit, and two, it's never had a chance to flower and fruit a second time. The floricanes, however, well, those are the ones you want to prune and take out of your patch, because they're never going to flower and fruit ever again. Okay, great in theory, but how does it work in practice? Beginning mid to late winter, after all shoots have completely died back, remove all the spent floricanes. They come out easy, but try not to yank on them. Simply cut them down right at the soil level. The trick is, how do you tell all the floricanes and primicanes apart? Well, by mid to late winter, it's super easy. In a patch of thousands of shoots, it's not like you've gone around and labeled all the primicanes as they sprout. Seasoned growers can tell just by looking at them, as the floricanes are thinner, battle-worn, and completely dead. For sure, the primicanes are dormant and look dead, but they're very much alive, and they're usually quite a bit thicker. But if you're still having trouble telling the difference, spent floricanes snap easily. When bent to any degree, they literally just snap. They're so brittle that each one breaks in two with a minimal amount of pressure. Primicanes, however, well, they're living shoots. They're still green on the inside, so they're very malleable and very bendy. Again, if you're still unsure, this is where the spring pruning comes in handy. Spent floricanes from the previous year, not only are they never going to flower and fruit again, they're never going to come back to life. They're never going to sprout any leaves. So, the following spring, when your raspberry patch sprouts back to life with new greenery, the shoots that don't, well, those are the old floricanes. Those are the ones you can cut down. It's a pretty easy, foolproof method to pruning your raspberries. Okay, whether it's winter or spring, all the dead floricanes get removed right down to the ground. It's super easy. Just go through your patch carefully, taking out each of the obviously dead floricanes. As well, I also take this time to take out any of the small primicanes. Any of them that are shorter, thinner, or at all runty. Raspberries are a thick bush, and it's no question that their greatest competition comes from themselves. Regular thinning is just good for the patch. Normally, I'm only going to thin out the small runty primicanes. It seems to be good for my small patches, but in the case of commercial growers, they'll thin out even the big ones. This is going to give them less canes in a given row, but more yield overall. There is some debate as to the actual optimal concentration of shoots per square foot, but if you find your patch is getting a little thick, a little overgrown, it won't hurt to take some shoots out, thin it out a little bit, and let the plant grow. One other kind of shoot that we haven't mentioned that you're going to find on your raspberries comes out in the spring, and it comes out right at the base of the plant. And these are going to be your basal shoots, commonly known as suckers. Suckers come up at the same time as primicanes, but they're intended to become their own new plants. They're not really a flowering or fruiting structure, and you're not likely to get any raspberries off them. They're great for expanding your patch or for colonizing new areas if you want to grow even more raspberries, but they themselves are a total drain on the main plant. Just like strawberry runners and tomato suckers, you gotta remove them to get optimal harvests. Not only that, suckers tend to be quite bushy, and they can really limit the airflow down below. This can really stagnate the plants in a patch, and low harvests and pruning may be the least of your worries. So, if you don't need any new raspberry plants, treat the suckers as weeds. Get rid of them as soon as you see them. Pruning raspberries is pretty straightforward. It's all about what cane you take and the timing in which you do it. Now, the two different ages of the shoots can cause some confusion. I totally agree. So let's recap those main points to make sure we got it all. Raspberries are a perennial crop with biennial shoots. Yes, the everbearing types will yield berries on the first year shoots, but the bulk of harvest comes from the second year canes. No matter which varieties you're growing, pruning raspberries is always done in the late winter or early spring. Everbearing types can have their prima canes or first year shoots cut down if you're single cropping them every year, but that's kind of wasteful. In all other instances, cut your spent floricanes or the second year shoots down to soil level every winter. Also, cut down any of those primacane shoots that appear spindly and small, as well as any of the suckers as soon as you see them. This is going to keep your patch healthy, active, and producing. Now, if your raspberries are getting a bit overgrown, you can selectively cut out the primacanes as well. Although a well looked after raspberry patch, well, this is seldom necessary. Raspberry plants are an amazing perennial. Very little care and maintenance is needed for this hardy boss to keep coming back year after year. With the patch all pruned and patiently waiting for spring, my hope is that you guys get your greatest harvest next year. Hey, best of luck guys, and I'll see you soon. Hey, thanks so much for watching guys. I appreciate the support more than you know. And if you're getting value from these videos, please like and share them to spread the word and help your fellow gardener to grow better.